There's also the possibility that the federal government steps in before the deadline, sending the companies to binding arbitration. But so far, the labor minister has been reluctant to intervene. Take a listen to what he said earlier today.
It works when people put the work in that is required to get a deal, to make those compromises at the table. And those are the most enduring results. And that's our plan. That's the only plan.
Thanks. On the same topic, so I guess, would the NDP ever support back to work legislation for this potential work stoppage?
No.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. As you heard from the opening clips there, it sounds like the Liberals and the NDP don't really care about all Canadians out there, because while I'm recording this, it's being reported that the expiration on the negotiations would be 12:01 tonight. So meaning tomorrow when this video gets released, we might get more information on whether an agreement came through or not. And if one didn't, well, then the federal government will have to do something, even though right now they're just throwing up their hands saying, this is our plan, they need to negotiate, we don't need to do anything. Morning, everybody. This is a post-editing Mike here. Woke up, checked the news, and lo and behold, CN and CPKC lock out employees after failed negotiations with the union. That was the Globe and Mail and CTV News. National rail shutdown begins as employees locked out at both major Canadian railways. Trains across the country have grounded to a halt as 9,300 workers were locked out by both Canada's major railways after they failed to agree on a new contract before 12:01 a.m. As I mentioned in the video, that was the deadline. They didn't make it, so it seems like the ball might be in the federal government's court, and we'll just have to see what they decide they're going to do. But as you watch the actual video that I made, you'll see that the Liberals are saying that they're not going to be doing much. Now, I know this is an update, but I would really appreciate it if you still kept watching the rest of the video. And as always, I'll catch you guys on the next one. Thanks again. Yet if they don't do anything, it's going to cost Canadians a lot of money. And this is actually what the reporters were asking Jagmeet about in his most recent press conference. So take a look.
Hi there. I heard your opening comments about the potential rail strike, but I'm just wondering, you've been talking about affordability, and one of the issues there is the price of groceries and so on. And any kind of a major interruption of rail delivery would cause those things to spike. Do you not have concerns about the effect that a strike by fairly well-paid workers at places like CN and CP would have on low-income Canadians who have to buy groceries?
I would not be pitting workers against each other. This is about a big boss that's making massive profits, that's not treating the workers fairly, and are not negotiating in good faith. If they negotiated in good faith, if CP Rail and CN Rail negotiated in good faith, there would be a settlement. And the settlement's about making sure workers get paid a decent wage that keeps up with the cost of living, something I frankly think every worker should get, as well as keeping the workers safe, because keeping workers safe directly impacts overall safety of the rail system. And that is something that we've seen under the Conservatives. When we erode rail safety, there are serious disasters, and that cannot happen again. So this is really about the CN Rail and CP Rail, big profitable corporations trying to exploit workers, and we should stop that from happening. There should be a fair settlement negotiated, and the federal government should not be intervening to tip the scales towards these big companies again. That is wrong, and we will oppose that.
Now, believe it or not, that question was actually posed by the CBC, which was quite surprising, but it was a great question nonetheless, because as he stated, low-income Canadians, which now reports are saying 1 in 4 Canadians live in the poverty line, and as well as 1 in 4 Canadians, I believe, are going to be going to food banks now, will be the ones who are most affected by this strike if it does go through, because if the supply is decreased, there's not enough coming in, the demand is higher, and grocery stores could potentially raise the prices of, I don't know, say eggs or bread even more than they already have. And now these individuals who are in that low income bracket or category are the ones who are going to suffer. And Singh keeps saying, oh, we don't want to tip the scales for the CEOs. Well, why don't you think of tipping the scales for Canadians, the ones who can't survive, who can't live right now because everything is so expensive? How about you tip the scale in their favor so that they're not deeper and deeper and deeper into poverty? And even with this statement that he makes, the CBC reporter actually pushes back again, saying, well, yeah, that's what you're saying, but why wouldn't you want this to maybe go to arbitration? Because clearly the two parties can't come to a consensus. So why don't we just put an arbitrator in there? He can figure it out himself. He has no skin in the game. Maybe he can spot out that the employer asking for way too much, or the employees are asking for way too much, and make his decision that way. And this is what he had to say.
And I heard you say you don't want the federal government to put its finger on the scales on the side of the employer, but why would sending this dispute to binding arbitration, for example, be taking the side of the employer? Wouldn't that simply be putting it into a venue where it can be decided independently and fairly?
Well, it takes away the right to negotiate. And fundamentally, the right to negotiate is about fairness, in fact, for both parties. And workers, in all cases, would rather negotiate fairly at the table rather than be forced to go into binding arbitration, which could go either way. Depending on the arbitrariness of the arbitrator, it could be something that hurts the workers. It could favor the employer. We don't know. What is more fair is to negotiate at the table. And binding arbitration is something that the employers want to see happen. For some reason, it must benefit them. And so what we want in all cases is workers to be able to negotiate their settlements, their agreements in a fair way. That is the fundamental principle of a collective agreement. That is what New Democrats believe in. It is clear from example of again and again that neither the Liberals and Justin Trudeau nor Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives care in the same way about having fair negotiated settlements and agreements. That's the difference between us and them.
Now look, I get what Jagmeet's saying. It is their right to negotiate and it should be fair. But when you set a certain time frame or window for these negotiations to happen, and you're either at the expiration of that or have surpassed it and are now holding Canadians hostage for this whole dilemma of yours, then yeah, I think it's part of the federal government's duty to step in sooner rather than later, set up an arbitrator, try to get this process moving again. Because now if you're listening to some of these other companies, what they're doing to get ahead of this, if it does go into a strike, sounds like it's going to cost us even more money. But yeah, just take a listen to this.
Well, we are talking about the largest port in the country. The port says 2/3 of all the goods that move in and out of here are moved by rail. 90% of exports are moved by rail. So they have already communicated with ships that are incoming with cargo to slow down to try to prevent some of the backlog congestion they are expecting here at the port. And I spoke with a logistics company a little while ago, and he detailed some of the juggling that's going on here at the port and with companies like that. And he gave an example where if you have a container that was destined for Toronto, what they're now doing is reaching out to the shipping companies and changing the final destination from Toronto to Vancouver, because it would have automatically come into the port, hopped on a train, headed to Toronto. So they're changing that final destination. They're then scrambling to find a truck to go to the port, pick up that container, take it to a warehouse, and then find a truck to drive that cargo all the way to Toronto. He says, of course, there's a fee to change that final destination. There's also increased costs to ship that container of $6,000 to $8,000 per container. And he says that number will likely increase because it is an issue of supply and demand. So if the shutdown were to happen, those costs would likely go up. And those are costs, he says, consumers will likely eventually feel.
But we are hearing that there are repercussions from a possible work stoppage. So in Toronto, in Toronto, no-go trains are on the Milton lines or in the city of Hamilton. And this is something that we have been discussing all day in terms of what could happen if there was a work stoppage. So 32,000 commuters across the country's largest cities, including Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver, may not be able to take the train line to work or wherever they have to go because the lines, the CP lines that those trains run on could be suspended. So there are other implications as well in terms of the economy. So this is going to impact everything from agriculture to energy to construction to manufacturing.
And so you hear all that, and then you hear Mr. Singh stuck in his whole little ideology about, oh, we're here for the workers, unions, yeah. When it's like, okay, I get it. Again, it is their right for negotiation fairly and all that stuff. But you've passed your window of negotiation. Now there's going to be a trickle down effect that's going to be hitting all Canadians, whether, as you said, it's work, economics, groceries, all that kind of stuff. It's going to be affected now. So maybe you should do something about it, or maybe you should support having something done like that. But you say, no, that's why we're different than the Liberals and the Conservatives, when you're just hurting Canadians as much as potentially you're suggesting they are. And let's not forget, you're the ones keeping the Liberals propped up currently in the government. And Trudeau actually came out today, did a very, very brief little, yeah, this is what we're going to do, this is what we think about it, and then walked away from questions. But then Freeland had a little bit of a press where she just rinsed and repeated the same thing over and over and over again. So take a look at these if you can stand them.
Regarding the rail negotiations, this is an issue that we are following extremely closely and moving forward on in every way we can. The minister was just meeting with the two sides yesterday. He continues to be in Calgary working on this. My message is very straightforward. It is in the best interest of both sides to continue doing the hard work at the table to find a negotiated resolution. Millions of Canadians, of workers, of farmers, of businesses right across the country are counting on both sides to do the work and get to a resolution.
What will it take for the federal government to do something?
Michelle Bellefontaine, CBC. What is your department expecting or forecasting in terms of the economic impact of a complete rail stoppage? And what kind of contingency plans are underway?
Thank you for the question. And let me just start by saying Canada is a trading nation. We make a lot of great things that we sell to the world, and we should be proud of that. And our railways are an essential way that we get our goods to market.
Now, before we continue with the rest of that clip, she sounds exactly like Kamala Harris when she was talking about Ukraine and Russia being, Ukraine's a small country and Russia's a big country and what they're doing is bad. She talks to people like they're children, like they're dum-dums. It's so irritating, but just listen to what she just said. Go back a second, and now listen to this clip.
So Ukraine is a country in Europe. It exists next to another country called Russia. Russia is a bigger country. Russia is a powerful country. Russia decided to invade a smaller country called Ukraine. So basically, that's wrong.
How did these individuals get into positions that they're in now? I just don't get. But anyways, let's listen to the rest of this.
Canada and the Canadian economy have been through some really tough times since COVID first hit. We had lockdowns, then we had shortages, then we had high inflation, then we had high interest rates. We are now truly starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel, with inflation back within the Bank of Canada's target range for 7 months, and interest rates having come down twice. It is entirely unacceptable for anyone to get in the way of that economic progress that we have all been making and that has been so hard fought and so hard won. So I want to take the opportunity that your question presents to say to the parties, to say to the companies, to say to the union, we are expecting you to work really, really hard, to negotiate in good faith, to negotiate with real energy and intensity, and to get a deal done. Your customers expect that. Your customers' employees expect that. The farmers who I saw on my way here swathing, they expect that. The people who work here, they expect that. Canada and Canadians expect that. So we know the best deals are reached at the negotiating table. We are expecting the parties to roll up their sleeves and get a deal done ASAP.
As my follow-up, though, I mean, how patient can the government afford to be with these negotiations given the economic consequences? And I'm wondering if you can tell us what kind of contingency plans the government has.
Our plan is for the parties to listen to Canadians, listen to their neighbors, listen to their friends, to recognize that it is totally unacceptable for us as a country to sabotage ourselves right now. We have been through a lot. We have made so much progress with our economy, and Canadians from coast to coast to coast are depending on the employers, are depending on the union to get a deal done and to get it done with alacrity. So I want them to recognize the country has no patience with dilly-dallying right now. They can achieve a deal. They need to get a deal done. They need to take their responsibility seriously.
Now, surprisingly enough, those questions were actually posed by the CBC, which I thought they did a pretty good job. However, any other media outlet that posed a similar question or a question about the railway got the exact same cookie cutter answer that she just gave over and over and over again. And I'm not going to play all those because that's like 22 minutes of the same question or same answer. However, as you could hear, they don't have a contingency plan. And even when a reporter potentially could have given them one by asking them about the water supply situation, mentioning that chemical plants that treat our water to make it drinkable say they only have about a week or two supply left. And if they do run out, what would you guys do as a federal government? And this was her answer.
Follow-up, Minister. The Canadian Chemical Association says cities at best have only 2 weeks of chemicals to treat drinking water, which can only be transported by rail. Will your government commit to ending the labor dispute before there are issues with drinking water?
Again, Charles, thank you for the question. I take this situation extremely seriously. So does our whole government. Steve McKinnon, our labor minister, is working really 24/7 on this. We know the best deals are reached at the bargaining table, and we know whose responsibility it is to get a deal. It's the responsibility of the companies. It's the responsibility of the union. Your questions are important, and your questions are the questions every single person in Canada is asking. I want the employers, I want the unions to hear us. I want them to roll up their sleeves, to recognize Canadians need them to get this done, to reach a deal, so we can keep on moving forward.
And what do you know? A non-answer. And not any non-answer, the exact same answer you've just given the past 3 or 4 other media outlets. Like, it's mind-blowing that she can just stand there and just say the same thing over and over and over again. And everybody's fine with it. It just drives me absolutely nuts. But as always, these are just my opinions on the whole situation. I'd love to hear from you guys. So please let me know in the comment section below. And as always, I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks so much.